なんだか事件の匂いがする。
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
ワクワクする事件が間もなく起きる。そんな予感がするよ。
俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
探偵は探偵らしく振る舞わなくっちゃ。いろんなところを見回って証拠を集めないとね。
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
ワクワクする事件が間もなく起きる。そんな予感がするよ。
俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
おや？なんだか事件の匂いがする。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
探偵は探偵らしく振る舞わなくっちゃ。いろんなところを見回って証拠を集めないとね。
拠点？また良くないことが起きたの？
知ってるか、俺たちの拠点が。
クワクする事件が間もなく起きる。そんな予感がするよ。なんだか事件の匂いがする。
Hi everyone, welcome to the stream. Welcome. I'm still waiting on my Genshin to update. I should have did that as soon as I got home today, but no. I didn't even think about it. I did it on my phone. I knew it was a thing. And I did do it. Turtle, thank you so much for the sub for the 35 months. Thank you. And welcome Michigan, Lady Rain, Crisis Goat. Welcome. And thank you so much for that follow, King Midship. Thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome everyone. I hope you're having a good Wednesday. We made it to Wednesday. I'm actually live again, and I will be live again on Friday. We got some community games to play, you know? Internet willing, it'll happen, because we're probably try to do bingo again since that didn't happen last time. It's about time I went live again. I thought you were fixing to say you're muted. I'm like, oh my god. I was gonna go, oh no. Hi friend, hi Afro, hi, welcome. Oxo voice what? Oh, voice chat. Yeah, we can do voice chat. Hold on. I'm just like, well, voice what? What are you talking about? I don't know what we're talking about. Alright, yeah. Let's do this. Let's go find a room. If my Discord's open. Yes, it is. Yeah, I thought you were gonna say that my voice is muted or that you couldn't hear me or something silly like that. I was like, ooh, no. No. Alright, we're gonna come in here. Hey! Hi, Lady Rain, welcome. Welcome. I have the beautiful Lady Rain here with me. So, how is everyone? What did you have for dinner? I was bad. I went to Zaxby's and had chicken and fries and fried pickles.
Oh, I had pizza. Like almost the whole pizza.
I was super hungry today too. That's why I normally just come home and eat something light in the afternoons, but I was super hungry today.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm starving. I'm getting something on the way home. And then I got home and my chatbot wanted to update, OBS wanted to update, Genshin wants to update. I'm just like, okay. It's one of those days.
Yeah, I should have warned you about the Genshin updating.
Yeah, and I should have known because my phone had to do it, but your phone let you do it in advance, which is nice.
Yeah, your computer lets you do it too.
Okay, so if I had turned it on, it would have did it in advance yesterday. But no, I did it for my phone yesterday because that's the way it works. My day is going good. I worked hard.
Oh, there it is.
Got a lot of things done. Don't feel quite as behind schedule on things, so that's good. Trying to balance my work-life stream balance right now. Work-life stream, eat, sleep, and eventually exercise. So we'll see how that goes over the next month. That's gonna be fun. So I got my regular job, I got a freelance job, and I'm gonna stream for you guys. So 2 to 3 days a week. So gonna do it. I got it all planned out. And I'm gonna attempt to get 8 hours of sleep. I'm like,
You 8 hours of sleep?
I got 7.5 last night. If you don't
What?
count tossing and turning like a wild animal, like after the 4.5 mark, because my body's used to only getting 4.5. I know I'd be happy with 6. I really would. 6 is ideal for me, but I said I got 7.5, even though, you know, I was awake
Don't you dare.
ever.
Don't look at me like that.
I just have to be in bed like 9.5 hours to get 7.5 hours. So yeah, that's how it works. I have to get to bed early. Aiden! Thanks for the boops, Aiden! Oh, don't we have that as a command now? Isn't boop a command? I think so. Boop. Yes! Boop stream elements. Why? Oh, did you just break the bot? You broke the bot!
No.
Eden broke the bot! He broke the bot with Let's Get Salty!
Come on, Eden.
Eden, the bot is already not working for me today. You had to go and break it. It had an update today and it was already being cranky.
Eden. How rude.
That's the salt. I got your salt right here. It's Himalayan pink salt. You good? You want some Himalayan pink salt? I got you, man. I got you.
I forget that you keep salt on your desk.
I do. I would say 80% of the time it's there, unless I took it to the kitchen. Because I do eat at my desk a lot. Oh, but yeah, thank you so much for that sub for the 46 months. Holy cow, thank you, Eden. Much appreciated. It's verifying resources. In the meantime, let's see if I can get this bot restarted again. Now it's probably gonna tell me I gotta reconnect all the things or something. Like it should have a minute ago and it didn't. That's basically how long we have been friends. That's true. 61 months? Holy cow, Shane, thank you for the subs, guys. You were awesome. Everybody coming in here with the subs. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Notice please check.
I still have a few more days.
Reauthorize your doohickeys. It still wants me to reauthorize them because it's done updates, but it's still working though. So I will reauthorize later as long as the bot's working. Can just wait. Genshin needs to happen.
Yep. Knew that was gonna happen.
Oh my god, right? Oh. Yeah, we're gonna do some Genshin. I'm gonna quickly. Oh.
Guess I'm climbing up on top of the statue.
I'm gonna quickly run around and do my dailies. What happens, so. Music to my ears. But welcome, Shane. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you again for the 61 months. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are awesome. You're just gonna be salty the whole time, Eden. Why?
Sounds about right.
Oh, right. I still gotta get a longer cord for this. This bothers me. I want a black one that's long and you don't see it. And I just don't break down and buy one. I don't know why.
Oh. Yes.
I don't know. I've had... And you guys won't believe this thing? I've been using it for like 5 years. The same cord. I mean, I've had my pink headsets for part of the time in there, but they weren't working that great. At all. I missed the pink cat ear ones, but they quit working on me. Very shortly after I got them, I think. Pretty much. It's still verifying file integrity. It's doing stuff.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to do that.
At least we have background music now. That makes me happy.
Alright, Seely,
At
where are you
least
going now?
like Genshin. Eden, what'd you have for dinner? We're talking about what we had for dinner. What did you have? Yeah, my god, so gourmet. What? 65 of 50. What?
Oh my god.
Orchardian gifted a tier 1 sub to Chris_GH0 style.
Oh my gosh!
Eden.
Eden!
Holy crap!
I had a bunch of subs. Oh my god! It's gonna go on for days now.
Orchardian gifted a tier 1 sub to Hex.
I think that's the point now.
Oh, thank you, Eden. Thank you. I was not expecting that at all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I'm just gonna see who all pops up that's gonna greatly appreciate these.
Sub to Scott Jones.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Be doing it for days. Oh, now I gotta reset my sub goal.
Tier 1 sub to Robot Fencer.
No. Oh, Robot Fencer, congratulations on your sub. Neko-chan, Sky got one.
Sky was the limit.
I should go up and read who all got one. Oh, cool. I'm looking.
Eden
Thanks.
Orchardian gifted a tier 1 sub to Avivanik.
Who growled? Oh, Eden! You know that notification's gonna be a while before it gets here. Holy cow!
Gifted a tier 1 sub to random_bit_.
Oh my gosh, are you gonna become the all-time bit leader again if you do that? I don't know where that just put you. Jeez. Look at you. I can't even math. Is that like, I don't even know. It's a lot of bits. It's 1,500 bits. There you go.
It's a lot, yeah.
It's a lot. Is something kind of special gonna happen now that you have this many subs? I don't
Eden Orchardian
know.
gifted a tier 1 sub to Alex Broskis.
I think I'm the top tier again. Nice. A wild haunter appeared, guys. I do need to do a special stream. It would be lovely if I could plan a special stream each month. But I have to figure out something.
1 sub to Burritos TV.
You have the idea in my head. This month this is gonna be iffy though. But I gotta have fun, right? Gotta have fun. Even though I'm working my booty off.
Eden Orchardian gifted a tier 1 sub.
I love how it bleeps out Ichi's last name. Ichi badass. Because did ... Oh, poor Ichi.
Eden Orchardian gifted a tier 1 sub to J_White_NZ.
Oh, Jay White got it. Yay! Congrats. Oh my god, you better not.
Gifted a tier 1 sub to DeathGod66602.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that'd be a bit excessive. I would, I would get to buy a new computer or something at that point, so. Which is on my list for,
Eden Orchardian gifted a tier 1
by
sub to
December.
Nick Dahi.
It would be a bit excessive. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Jeez.
Eden
You're not
Orchardian
wrong.
gifted a tier 1 sub to Blazing
God.
Red for you.
Yes, I got the Haunter.
Oh, jeez. Blazing Heart.
Eden Orchard
The
gifted a
Leon.
tier 1 sub to Theo.
Welcome.
The loin.
The loin. I know, I call it Leon. Or loin and lion. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
so
it's still going, Eden.
Yes.
Eden Orchardian gifted a tier 1 sub to Y Interactive.
Yeah, there's a lot more than you think there is.
Interactive.
Breathe.
Oh my gosh. And then the vets haven't even popped up yet. Like, jeez.
Nope.
Eden
Days.
Orchard did a tier 1 sub to random
days.
fan underscore 2022.
Days and days. Alright, we're gonna start down here because we like climbing mountains.
Eden Orchardian gifted a tier 1
Cat
sub
needs
to
faster
DMV
sub alerts. Right? Bloop, 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 bloop. I guess I could speed them up, can't you? I think you can.
Yeah. I think partially you can, yeah.
It's not usually a problem.
To EV underscore Lisa.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's not usually a problem.
Also the truth.
Orders given. Orders received.
Uh-huh.
Eden Orchardian share.
There's
Oh
the
my
biddies.
God.
1500.
Jeez. 1,500 biddies.
Spicko cheered. X5.
Thank you for the 5 biddies too. Shane, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I think I'm good. I think I gotta climb. Oh, this was my staircase I used last time. Let's see. And I jumped over here. Trying to figure out what path I took last time to get to this place. I'm like watching the wrong screen. I'm watching my stream screen instead of my actual screen.
Why?
I don't know. They both work. I don't know. That one's just smaller. It's got chat on it. Alright, now we're gonna kick this booty.
Oh yes, the ruined birds.
Yo. Pyong.
Wow. As a good night should.
Go, Noel. Oh, I got stomped in. I don't know how she like withstood that. Like, look at her go! Dang! She's like,
Their shield.
I know. She was just like, "Don't push me around." For a bit.
Someone needs assistance.
We got time to catch some butterflies. Or fireflies.
I must leave no stone unturned.
And bust some rocks and... Yeah, I know, you're gonna hit me. Gonna work on it. I should just change over to the other one though.
I missed a spot.
I think I just change over to... Oh, what does she have now though? I think she's only got wind right now. She ain't gonna do much. Or maybe it will. A traveler. Traveler's getting beat up.
Wind blades. Prepare to be blown away.
Chong. That took a taste out of me. Michigan! Thank you for the kitties. Welcome, Michigan. Oh yeah? Go down. Okay, okay, so that daily's done. Gonna teleport to the next one. But yeah, guys, you're doing awesome. Hope you're keeping well. And if you play Genshin, drops should be on. And if you don't play Genshin, it's a free game and you might get addicted. Just saying.
A little bit.
It's very addictive.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit. Cool. I play a little bit here and there, like daily, just about. Just about. Just about. That's why they're called dailies.
Mhm.
Ah, Fairy bunny.
No escape. Life goes on.
Hey now.
Wheel of life.
Hey, come over here into the water. I'll freeze you.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Get in the water with me. See what happens.
wow. Yeah.
I'm gonna freeze you. Just wait.
Rise.
Frozen boy. What? Weapons? Weird. Hey, KimonoKat, did you see the Pokemon Presents a couple days ago? No, I didn't, but I know that you can, play with, Pokemon Go now.
Yes!
Faster.
I haven't tried it yet,
Okay,
though.
faster. Sacred name.
I can transfer my Pokemans now.
Right?
Oh,
Wheel of life.
I can see why this game has got so much attention. I mean, it's adorable, for one. It's a beautiful game. Oh my god.
Feel that.
It's beautiful.
Like.
And they just want to keep getting in the ice with me. I love how he was frozen in midair. He wasn't even touching the ground.
Like.
Oh, jeez.
Leave it all to me. Time to clean up.
Nor the factor standing on water. There we go. I mean, I was referring to Pokemon Sleep and Scarlet Violet DLC. Oh, no, I didn't pay attention to that. I have been so busy with work. But no, there's this Pokemon Sleep and Scarlet Violet DLC. Sleep? What is Pokemon Sleep? Tell me more, tell me more. I want to know more. How can I freeze when I am ice? I don't know. That one didn't do it. That one did do it. There we go. Let me pick it. Catch a crab. Caught a couple crabs. Alright, time to teleport. Next destination. Thank you again. Thank you for all those crazy, crazy, crazy sub drops. You did not have to do that. Okay, the red dots have to go, by the way, too. Oh, it's because of the things in the stuff. Beacon or staff? Beacon sounds like bacon. I'll pick that one.
Yeah.
That's my reasoning.
Your logic.
Oh.
Your logic. It's definitely something else.
Oh, I mean, it does. So, you know, it sounds like bacon. It works. Oh. It was announced like 5 years ago, but it's finally coming out this year. You have to watch the direct to get more info on it. Basically, a phone app that records, monitors your sleep patterns. Oh, and it's the Pokemon one? Oh god, I need that.
But it's Pokemans? Oh,
My
no.
watch already records my sleep habits, but now if they're gonna do a Pokemon one, yes. I'll just let them both record my sleep habits. See how accurate they are. They probably work together. Turtle, welcome to the stream! Welcome, welcome, welcome! Myrtle, Myrtle, Myrtle! Da, 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 da. Licks. Who'd you lick? You licked yourself, Michigan. Were you dirty? Did you have to clean your fur? Let's see. Shane gets the lick. Hugs go to community bot. Hugs, try again. Again? Okay. This is rigged. Cookies at Eden, you good? Is it 1500? Yeah, or no? Yeah, because the stupid bots got the hugs twice. There you go. You get all the cookies. And the DLC for Scarlet Violet is coming out in the fall and winter of this year. It seems like it will be good, but it's kind of a shame they aren't adding the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance Pokemon games to NSO. Yeah. I love kicking myself. I thought it said I love kicking myself instead of licking myself. Oh my god.
Mono, you haven't had a nap today yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
Yep. Then, yeah, that's it.
I'm like so hyped about being playing right now too, and that's part of it, so.
I feel like running.
I have not been playing lately, and I'm excited to be streaming. So, I'm a little bit more hyper than normal. Oh my god, I just looked at my Discord profile pic for my Go Live. It's like dorky looking as heck.
Sounds about right.
I don't know if everybody sees the same photo, but this one looks like... I'm pretty sure most people see the same photo. It's like, what the heck, Discord? It captures your best moments and frames them. And you're like, thanks, Discord. Thanks for your love and attention. So yeah, if you guys want to join my Discord, if you're lurking and listening, there it is. Now we're talking about it. Alright, so let's go do what he asked. I see some chicken legs. Oh, I start off with chicken legs. Well then. I'm not wall, Donna. If there's a faster way to get up there. Like a teleport point on the other side of this wall. Nope, there's not. But we could just keep running around in a circle. Go into the camp the right way through the front door. No climbing required. Like, this is a trap? It's a trap. What am I looking for in here? Looking for this. Investigate. Maybe? Found a key. Okay. So that's what I needed. Now I just gotta go back to Hans. Ready? Set, jump! Yes, I found your key. Thanks for your help. It's like, is it supposed to turn black? That startled me. Alright. Where's the last quest? So apparently I haven't unlocked these other two unknown things yet. I don't know. Probably slacking. Most people probably have them unlocked.
Yeah, I have them unlocked. They're just domains, though.
You literally just have to, like, click on them, right? To unlock them? You don't even have to go in them, do you? We're gonna find out. Yay! And I think it's, yeah, it's unlocked now. Then we gotta go that way up that hill still. That's a big hill.
A little bit.
Go faster. Is that a hole? Ooh. I wanna go down the hole.
Do it.
Oh, now I gotta climb the hill again.
And?
I'll go toward my 10 mining for the day. Oh, can you get out the crack? can't. Squeezed out. Defeat all 8 opponents. Okay. Wow, that's what she said. Ah, you know nothing. You know nothing, Michigan. I said nothing. Any opponents up here that want to be beaten? Nope. Nope. Just some good old radishes. I feel like people are sneaking up on me, so I'll just put up my shells. Whoa! What was that? Microphone. Holy microphones. Oh. Oh, that's the case. I know, you don't like... Fire doesn't do much to you guys, and it burns your little plants up. Alright, where are you at, little dendron boy? Gonna freeze you. Take care of you first, so you stop making those things grow. You want to be next. And you want to mess with me, so... We're going to fix that.
I must leave no stone unturned.
So we did what? 4, 8. Chi-Chi wants to come back out. And oh, it's a slime. Reinforcements. Ooh, okay. Windy boy. No more wind for you. Wow, that's a... Oh, I'm reading the same thing from earlier. Oh, jeez.
Orders given. Orders received.
Just streamer things, it's fine.
Yeah, we repeat what people say when we see a message pop up. Especially with the bot message following it, you know? Made me look and read the last line. Hey, at least you know I'm paying attention.
Faster.
I'm looking at that chat.
Okay, faster.
Whether you said anything or not.
Leave it all to me.
Whoa, what a way to troll me there. What a way to troll me there. Michigan, you're on it today. What a way to troll me. Okay, we're gonna come up here. We're going to claim all. Oh, I didn't do that code I got the other day. Or earlier today, or whenever it was. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody posted a code, I think. Discord. Nico, Nico, nee! Nico, Nico, nee! Update summary. Da da da. Events. Version highlights. New character. New weapons. New events such as wind balloon breath. Check the page. She looks cool. And then
once there was a glorious kingdom established among the heavens. From
confirm. Artful and period 39 days, 7 hours. Reach on level 30 and select a weapon of your choice. Oh. Well, we know which weapon we want. One more red dot to kill.
Nice to meet you.
Test runs. Yes, we definitely want to do the test runs for these. Are you ready? Gotta do the test runs. Let's do it, let's do it. How you say her name? Dea? Dea?
Dea, I think.
Dea.
She's fun. I already did the test trial yesterday.
Gonna get some more GMs. Oh, Shane, thanks for the retweet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For the likes, Michigan. Thank you, guys. Let's see what I missed. Oh yeah, I was gonna do that other code entry too. But let's do this first. Click anywhere. Alright, feet on the floor, sit up straight, posture check. Okay, Mono, I posted some vids in the Nintendo chat. Awesome, thank you, much appreciated. I will try to find time. Probably when I eat dinner tomorrow night. Or lunch tomorrow to catch up. I have a very strict schedule right now. So yeah. 15-minute breaks, lunches, and dinners. I can watch whatever I want. And Sunday! Because I'm probably gonna sleep all freaking day Sunday. You don't laugh, right? Just get choked up over there.
I inhaled a bottle cap.
Oh no!
Not a real bottle cap. I'm just putting it out there. It's the candy.
Candy? I don't have any balls. This is sad. I need some balls.
Mono, they're just up higher.
This is true.
My people are used to the desert life, but still, I hope that one day they'll be able to find an oasis of their own. And leave the sand.
You don't know what to say?
Life.
Don't say anything. There. Now I can attempt to catch this Pokemon. Let's go.
I don't think Shane liked my comment.
Let's get it on.
Oh dang. She sounds powerful.
Oh yeah, she's great.
Gloves off.
Gloves off. Oh my god, her voice. Be still my heart. Just kidding. She's a wildfire. Wildcracker child. I don't know. She's something. Get out of the corner. Whoa.
You're dead meat.
You dead meat, dude. You said you're dead meat. Okay. Everybody see what just happened there, because I don't think I did. It happened so fast. It's pretty cool though. Oh, we've been spotted. Time to leave. Wait. Yeah. What am I even doing here? I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. The other one up there on that mountain? Looks like it. The best way to get up there is probably from on top of that thing. You can't really get on.
Thanks to it, Jeff
Racing
underscore
Tank!
for my sub gift.
Thanks to Jeff for my sub gift. Thank you, Racing Tank, for the 4 months. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Artist lurking. Thank you for the lurk, artists. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Much appreciated. I hope you're doing awesome. Okay. Okay, so I'm not climbing that wall. Obvious, these walls don't want me to climb them. They're like all facing upside down. Oh, your ball is stress. Oh no! Missed you too, Mono. Yeah, I missed you guys. I'll be back Friday too. We'll do some bingo Friday. Since my, bingo failed last time because of things and stuff out of my control called the internet. What is down the hill? Interesting. It's under me. All four of these dudes are just like quietly sitting here, minding their own business. These 2 dudes. And bam! Oh, that was fun.
Hey, I think that was a little overkill, Mono. Except they're still alive.
I know! They're down there somewhere. Oh, they came back! Okay.
Yeah, they respawn after a while.
That's my cue. Gone. Where's this thing that I'm hunting for? Where is it? Through the
Further down.
waterfall? Dang. Come through here.
Hidden. A little bit hidden.
Looks like it's pretty hidden. Because we were just up there.
That one might have to be unlocked with a quest, I think.
Oh,
I'm thinking
like
correctly.
it's hidden behind the rock stuff, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, no, there's the little fire pits.
Oh, fire pits. I mean, that thing imaging you?
No, turn around.
Oh, there it is. It's definitely hidden. Oh,
I couldn't remember if it was one of those ones that was hidden in the thing, but...
Oh, right here, Michigan, right here. This one, this one.
Forsaken Rift.
Oh, there we go. Okay. That's all we did. Just wanted the gems.
Hello, nice to meet
Okay, now we gotta do the other test run. And that one, trial by fire, you should get those things. I'm just like, nah, fam, nah. That one says nah, nah, nah. Fire Girl's much more impressive, I think. wrong one. I wanted the other cheek on the face. Wow. Oh, this side? Okay, okay, okay. That one then. See what you got. Electric boy.
Pointless. Judgment is upon us.
And what did that do?
You stand condemned. Guilty.
What?
Through me, justice is served.
He howls.
Penance is due. You stand condemned.
Interesting.
Guilty. Judgment is upon us. Their penance is due.
He's just a 5-star raiser. Also not worth it, right? Ugh. Kind of like the fire girl much better.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is...
She would be fun if I wasn't wanting to use Amber or something just to play with. What did I hit? I hit the wrong thing. But you didn't mean to go back in again. Wrong thing.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name...
Kitty. Meow. Bennett. Alright, little boy, let's go.
Let's light it up. I'm going in. Yeah, why do they never miss?
No, don't freeze me.
Everybody stand back. Ow. Let's light it up.
Ah!
Let's light it up. I'm going in. Yeah.
Okay, if they stay in your fire circle, but if they don't...
Teamwork is dreamwork.
Oh, I didn't see you hiding over here causing all the trouble.
Let's light it up.
Causing all the trouble here.
I'm going in. Yeah. Let's light it up.
Dang, he's tough. Is he down? Or is he just laying there?
Why do they never
There.
miss? Teamwork is dreamwork. Let's light it up.
There. Yeah. So, about that. Favorite was the fire girl.
Hello, nice to meet you.
And her name's Dia, I think. Is that how you say it, Turtle? Is that how you say Dia? Is it Dia? Turtle would know for sure. He's the expert.
Hello.
Let's see, what else did I get a message about? Oh, that's Shane's reminder for Nintendo. Okay, okay. Just checking. Oh, all the peanut butter day and pig day stuff for Meowguard. And then, where was that at? Mobile. Genshin code from Turtle. Let's do that real quick. Do. Team code. What I get? Yay! Successfully redeemed. Can I get drops from watching my own stream? I wonder if that's how this works. We'll find out. It's kind of crazy if that's the case. No, it escaped right as I threw the ball. I wasted a Pokeball. Why me? Why me? Rigged? Right. That's totally rigged. It's just stealing all my balls. That's all it's doing. That's totally rigged. It's just stealing all my balls. That's all it's doing. What? Why do I hear myself? I heard myself. And it was kind of daunting. I'm not used to being able to hear myself, so yeah, that was interesting. Da, 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 da. Okay. Back to Genshin. But yeah. We redeemed a code for things and stuff. Achievement award. Claim all. What was that one? 60. 4. Drops. And other things and stuff. There we go. I guess we could share the code with you guys too.
Would you like some tea?
See, why not?
I'll brew you some.
You don't already
Sugar,
have
1
the
cube of
extra
tea.
code I just used, guys. Here's the code. I'll put it in chat. There you go. Get you some gems. Get him, get him, get him, get him. Ugh. Alright, back to Mondstadt we go. We can turn in our dailies. And then we can see what kind of missions we need to go on to get caught up.
All kinds. All kinds of missions. You got quite a bit of ways to catch up to me. I just sit here for hours on end. Cause you leave me unattended for at least like 4 hours.
No. I have to work and I don't get to play.
I mean, I have to work too, but I get off earlier.
Yeah, I don't get to play like you, sadly. It's okay. It's okay.
It's probably for the best, to be honest.
I have to feed my addiction even more.
Leave it to me. All of it. Whatever it is. What
Definitely addicted
exactly
to this
is
game.
It. I didn't
And I
quite
totally
catch
could
the
do some
quest.
pulls and see what I get today, but I don't know. I haven't decided whether I just want to keep saving them and see what characters they put out next month. And have a whole bunch of wishes.
Ad Astra Abyssosk.
'Cause I'm,
Welcome
like,
to the Adventurers
Really
Guild.
close to hitting my, what, 70 pity, I think is what they call it. Which means I, like, almost guaranteed to get whatever the character is. So...
Thank you for completing today's commission. Ad Astra Abyssosk.
There we go.
Someone needs assistance.
Yeah, somebody just showed me how to count it the other day, but I don't remember exactly. The place you go to see what you've redeemed already. I don't think it's under wishes, though. Oh yeah, it's history, I think. Maybe? Yeah. Maybe. Somewhere in here. Then you, like, count them or something? These are weapons. I think it's the character one. don't quite have the accounting thing figured out yet, but that's how long it's been since I had a 5-star was Chi-Chi. I think you're supposed to count backwards from that, like 70. And that's how you figure it out. I think I'm at 52. Yeah. So, and I have like almost just enough wishes to get to 70. Yeah, I got 15. That's like, it's me right at the edge of it. Right at the edge of it. Sips. So not quite there yet. Although, wait, what? I got 800? Where did the other gems just come from? I didn't get that many.
So I think there were a crap ton that went through with the update. Because I had a crap ton come through on
I just
mine.
spent them a minute ago, though. Unless these are the ones from the last drops expedition that finally got maybe sent to me via email. Because you earn them by doing the drops thing? Streaming?
Right.
And I know they're on their way, but I don't know.
Maybe.
Nah, I would have got an email.
Hmm.
I would have thought. But I know I just spent them like a minute ago, and I had like just enough to buy one wish. That was it. And now I have 825.
Did you claim all your mail yet? Is that what happened?
Maybe, but still, there's no way I had that much in my mail.
You never know if you don't check your mail every day.
I mean, I checked it at least last week, and I only get like just very few from checking thing. Look at that. 5.
Yeah, I was able to purchase 5 today too. I wonder if it just happens to have to do with the update.
And it was just slow, maybe? I don't know, but I did do the redeem thing, but that was only like, I forget what it was, just like 60 just a second ago.
Yeah.
And then I did my dailies, which was 20. So I should have only had, 60, 70, 80 of them in there. That's it. Shouldn't have had 825. I don't know where this came from.
I got quite a few though this morning when I signed in, so.
But like I said, I spent it when I started up the game. I claimed everything and I bought one wish. So I don't know where it came from.
It took a while for mine to show up. Just saying.
That must be it. It must be it. Oh, I don't want the weapons anyway. I'm trying to figure out where all the extra gems came from out of nowhere. I had like 825 all of a sudden. I'll probably get an email later tonight that says, oh, we sent you gems or something. But you would think it would be like a thing I claimed. Did I claim it? Not even pay attention?
For maintenance.
Survey, Twitch. Maintenance. Oh. So there was 600 and it was just delayed.
No, it was from the update that they just did yesterday.
Yeah, which they consider maintenance. That's what Turtle's talking about. Yeah. just didn't show up right away. Okay. That's cool. I'm not gonna complain. I have a gazillion wishes now. I have 20 of them. Going to cherish them forever and ever. We need daily maintenance, don't we all? Wait, oh, you're talking about Primo. How do you say it? Primo gems? I just call them gems. We need daily gems, please. That doesn't give me anything. That gets me 40. That gets me 20. That gets me 100. Adventures Guild has protested emergency performance, blah blah blah. Should I do these things down here? Probably to have all the gems?
Yes. Yes, you should.
And that one's like 13 meters from me. That one's like right here. But it doesn't have gems.
You seem tired.
Premos or gems? Okay.
I'll brew you some. Do you take sugar? 1 cube or 2?
Gems sounds so easy. I don't know why it's so hard to say Primo gems. It is. Just... It does. It sounds like it should be 2 different words. Wild Shroomish appeared. Catch it! Where's our heart? What? Oh. Because of the things. Shroomish. Shroomish. Promos and gems, yes. We're just gonna say gems. It's shorter and easier to type. Make a satisfying salad and give it to her. Okay, so where do I go? Make this. Oh, I probably just give it back to her. I probably already have one. Yeah. Delicious or regular? Oh, we give her delicious.
It's been getting quite busy recently.
Specialty dish. Shroomish has been caught by KimonoKat. Hey. Seems like I had to come here for 2 reasons. Very easy question. Here goes. It's the dandelion flower. Fix it. Flower, you see one.
Better see Barbara at the cathedral if you're injured.
Okay. Just gonna keep clicking on things. Quest complete. Yay! So did that finish up all those? Oh, it says talk to Charles now. Where's Charles? Where the heck? Where is she sending me? I don't see any purple things on the map. Wouldn't be that far away. Let's go read that again.
Are you tracking it?
No.
I swear on
Characters currently involved in other quests cannot join this quest. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, so you have to do the other quest that Charles is part of.
That one's closed. Just one.
Whenever you need me, I'll be there.
Do the ones that are right here first, even though they're not the gem ones, but I like doing the closest range ones. Acting Grandmaster, Master, Dandelion Tights. Grandmaster, I tried Dandelion Tights. Thanks for the lurk, Shane. Question answer, talk to Swan. What? Again?
Oh yeah, you have to answer all the questions.
Ready?
You have to answer them correctly.
Oh, I was just goofing off. Storm Terror's lair, right? Or tower? Lair. Okay. Next question. Alright, we'll try to listen to them correctly. According to knightly etiquette, it is proper form to address to use when speaking to unknown individuals encountering must have orders. Sneaky little turns. Urgent storm, strange yet respectable traveler? What? What? Why would I call a traveler strange but respectable?
Because that's what they call them.
It's like the other answers are like way too off. Oh, that was a lot of work. Alright, who else is close? Ooh. 100. That one's 600. A couple closer. Here's 126. Marking things off, Turtle. Be very proud of me. And getting things done. Rain's always proud of me.
Yes.
Tad too hectic. Nonetheless, I've heard your deeds spend other nights. What are you in charge of? Me? Well, my work mostly includes the character of administration of our baggage train, resource management, and record keeping. Simply put, I work in logistics. Well, Mondstadt present state, as you see, no doubt. With the Grand Master having taken much of our manpower with him, we have since been in a constant state of short-handedness. At the same time, our inventory is running a surplus to match, so I'm more than willing to exchange some of it for a little hand here and there. Things can get complicated here in the city, so we need experienced hands to make sure that things get done properly. Oh, you want me to deliver stuff? Look, the burdens act to Grandmaster's shoulders. I've already stored away their task. Details are right here. Oh my god. Reputation level 1. Complete reputation related task to increase your reputation. I haven't unlocked this yet. Interesting. 43%. Oh, dang. I can claim all these already. Okay. Whoa. Oh. Let's claim them all. Interesting. Unlock Mondstadt mining outcrop research. Ooh. Unlocked a recipe. You like food. Wings of his reach reputation level 8 in Mondstadt. Oh, we get pretty wings at level 8? Those are beautiful. Eat those. They look like gems. Why did I get exercise today? I did go for a walk, I think.
You went for a walk. You sent me a picture.
I did.
You were outside.
I'm gonna go charge my watch though. I'll be right back. 2 seconds. Just running to the other room. Back. I'm back. I don't like having my watch on next to the computer anyway. It's in the way of the keyboard.
Transfers of supplies must be reported.
Oh, wrong thing.
Leave it to me. All of it.
Now I'll go back down here. See which one am I close to. This one? Minecraft?
Uh-huh.
Minecraft, but it's
Yep.
Minecraft. 2 words,
Uh-huh.
not 1 word. Mining is not an easy task, but perhaps Mondstadt's blacksmith Wagner might have some tips for you. Okay.
Whatever it is.
These are things I probably should have did at the beginning of the game.
Catch your request.
Yeah, probably. But it's okay.
I do everything in whatever order, right?
I think I did those all like last week sometime.
Yeah. Can I touch? You have to buy them, don't you? Can't just pick any flowers you want. Dude, teach me stuff. Okay. Oh, I gotta actually go do something now?
Will these work? That's fine.
Take your pick.
You can have it.
You'll find no second-rate items at Wagner's. My strength still fails me.
Okay, which one's close now? I think we're hitting the... Oh, here's one.
Someone needs assistance.
Wind go with
Cider Lake. I wonder if it tastes like apple cider. Pull the area and clear any obstacle. You like this dude right here? And all those dudes? Okay.
Steady as stone. No escape. Go, Baron Bunny.
Oh, it's the windy person. Where is the windy person at? I'm gonna go find that windy person and destroy them.
Life goes on.
You can help me destroy these barriers.
As a good night should.
Take down the barrier. There's another something going on over this way. I'm gonna go check it out over here. Oh, Go Lurk. I didn't catch Go Lurk. Go Lurk has new meaning in stream versus being a Pokemon. I'm sure it's not pronounced Go Lurk, but you know. That's what it looks like, Go Lurk. Yeah. Really? Oh, so it only hit one of you. Lovely.
I must leave no stone unturned.
Come on, Amber. Do your tricks. Get your bear bunny out. Turn out their shields. Turn them up.
Let it rain.
Take them down. Now you want all the fire. Damn. Seems there's still things here. I don't know who that is. Wants to join my world.
I'm in the middle of a boss battle right now.
Yeah. So we're just looking around, destroying all obstacles. I think that's what we have to do. There you go. Then we'll be on our way this way. Oh, and the dog's barking.
Seriously?
Rough. Rough, rough.
Are you mocking the dogs outside?
Huh?
Are you mocking the dogs outside?
Yeah, maybe.
Sacred name.
What else fair?
Maybe.
Go.
Oh, where'd you go? They reset. Oh my game. They reset. They cheated. I don't even know.
Do that.
I had like, I was about to kill them all. They reset on me. I didn't mean to hit that one. I meant to hit this one.
Prepare to be blown away. Leave it all to me. Time to clean up.
Get your head. Oh, you're unhappy. Don't do that. Where is it? No?
Get out of the way. There. Port back to Huffman. Okay, where is Huffman? Oh, jump, 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 jump. Ruff, ruff. I don't think that's the normal dog barking.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
I think the little one's actually barking. The little one used to never bark. But I think the big one must not be outside, so the little one feels like he has to bark now. I don't know. Hey! Did things. Okay. I think you can look at just. Does it show far away? That one's not. This one's 300. No, it's 3,000. So we're down to a couple. 600 and 700 away. Go to this one because it's 100. Ooh. We'll teleport to here. Go heal up, and then go do this. Direction are we headed? Up the mountain, of course. Is there a better teleport thing up there?
Of course, it's up the mountain.
Really? Right? It might be better to teleport here. At least it looks like I'm on top of a mountain up there. I don't have to climb as high. Yeah. Much better. Hey, there's some rocks we can beat up. Gotta get Chi-Chi for her Naruto runs. I think she's become my favorite right now. That I have.
Life goes on.
What's this point? Like right down here below me. I bet. And there's a fire plant here. Yep. Enter the ruin. What are you working on? All the little thingamajiggies? These. Right?
She's looking for the
Here.
dummies.
I'm looking for these. The ones with the gems. I'm doing all the ones that have gems, but not really. I'm doing in the order that are the closest to me, closest to Mondstadt, and working my way out. I've done stuff that like everybody else has probably done ages ago that I haven't done. Alt key, Alt key, Alt key. It's the best key in the world. Alt key, and you can move your mouse however you want. I was gonna tell you that the other day, but I forgot. I wasn't sure. I was like, is he using the Alt key? I don't know. It's just about you shouldn't go all over the place. Well, Turtle, if I remember right, you were one of the first people that dragged me all over the place. Treasure hunting. I end up going all over the place when people join my world.
Okay, to be fair, Turtle, I go all over the place when I play alone, too, so...
And lead me astray. I don't need to do your story. Okay, maybe it was Reggie. We'll blame Reggie, then.
Yeah, Reggie's usually the one to blame.
It was fun, though. You know me, I do everything backwards. It's all good, it's all good. I'm doing story, you know, week 1 story stuff still. Because I just unlocked the map. I played Unlock the Map was the game I played. Yes, 6 or Alt key. I don't know if he can hear me. Is he still streaming?
No, yeah.
He's probably still streaming. He is?
Very carefully.
Golden.
Oh no, does Sixer not know how to ascend?
3, 4, and...
Yeah, he does.
Oh, okay.
He's assigned a few characters, and I taught him how to spend his gems and how to do wishes last night. I've been slowly teaching him stuff.
Gotcha. Y'all played without me last night? That's rude.
I didn't play with him. Oh, what did he just say? How the hell are your people 50? Mine are only 20 and I'm AR 20 now. Listen.
So I have some that are 50.
Lots
I have mostly 40, and I'm an adventure rank of 34.
Neither do I.
I don't know. Don't you get all the little papers and the treasures? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see.
Puddles, get down.
But I thought maybe he didn't know about the alt key the other day because he was pulling up the little thing you pull up with the controller.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, wait a minute. Okay, so what am I doing in here? Am I going through this thing? No? I don't know. I have no clue what I'm doing. Eating bad guys, that's what I'm doing.
Wheel of life.
Killing things, sounds good to me.
Opening box of Adepti tricks.
There's lots of mine. Nice.
Like. Go.
I think he died. No, he didn't die. He just fell down there somewhere, which I'm not going.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, I'm not going down there where he went. Oh god, I gotta beat a bunch of bad guys up. I don't like this. Are there any exploding barrels around? Look at that
Probably a
baddie
few.
thing over there. What is that? Does he got an exploding barrel on him? Nope. I don't even know what that is.
No one escapes my sight.
Ah, Chi-Chi.
I'll go.
Oh yeah, now it's awake. All right, over, traveler. Can I blow you off the cliff? Apparently not. Apparently that was a waste because you were doing your spinning thing.
I must leave no stone unturned. Hey, get him!
Whoa. No, no, no. Alright, Chi-Chi.
Life goes on.
You missed.
Wheel of life.
I missed my Dendro. Oh, Amber's got some things up her sleeve, but these guys are fire types, so I don't think it's gonna do much good. Oh, but I accidentally switched off Amber. Dang! Spinny arms. There's 2 more underground areas you'll need to unlock. Okay. I felt like taking a snack break. Oh. Oh, that's right, I gotta... Anyway. Get him in the back while he's not shielded up. Alright, robot. You gotta fight. This is no fun. No.
That's cheating.
Yes, it is cheating. You got me trapped in a corner. It's totally cheating. Get out of the corner. He's dead.
Life goes on. Rise. Oh, I didn't feel that.
Didn't feel that.
Sacred name.
Go.
Preserver. Play. Go. Ugh, I missed a spot. Leave it all to me. As a good knight should.
There we go. He's a tough boy.
No one escapes my sights.
I'm getting quiet because this battle is like taking forever.
See,
No,
I was
you're
in the middle of a
talking.
cutscene, so I muted myself because it's so loud.
Windblade.
Oh, I could ascend again.
Okay. Oh, now which way did we come from? I don't know. I got to turn around. Guessing not this way. Oh, we're gonna go through all these things now? In the updraft over there? Okay. Okay, I see how this is.
Oh god, yeah, I hated that one.
So I just need to wait until they're like close to me, right? I think so.
Oh, I'm definitely not at that level yet. I think I can wait on ascending.
Fly all the way to the end. Don't worry about the air draft thing.
You might want to use the air draft. It'll boost you up a little bit.
Yeah. Can I skip these guys? It's probably not. It's gonna go BAM! Wall! It's like, dang it, who put that wall there? I don't want all this.
Prepare to be blown away. Rise.
You gotta heal people. Get to work, Chi-Chi. I remember my first time on this domain. Oh. Is it nostalgic for you? Oh, won't let me climb up there. Interesting. It knows it won't let me cheat.
No.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Go.
Didn't even do it anyway. There you go. Alright, Chi-Chi's all charged up. She's ready to go to the other end. Is there anything useful down here? No, no, you do this multiple times. Oh no! Give him the chair! Oh no.
I'm realizing that because I gotta ascend too, but I'm like, I'm not high enough level for it, so. I'll just
Rise.
Alright, I've done my daily.
Go. Opening box of Adepti tricks. Oi. Yeah.
Eat it. These people must be starving. There's not much food in here. Okay, so we did that and that. Came from that way. We're going this way. That's my guess. But I don't see anything over here.
Faster? Okay, faster.
This one. No. No, it's this way. Happy Wednesday! Your Majesty! Thank you! Happy Wednesday to you too. Oh god. That bow. Oh. Let's go. Oh. 48 seconds. I want to do it in 48 seconds. Do I have to?
No, it's 480 seconds. You
Oh,
have 8
okay.
minutes. You're okay.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, that'd be really tough to defeat 9 opponents in 48 seconds.
Yeah, I read that wrong. Totally.
Okay, that's what you got me for.
Wow. Oi.
Oh, I remember him now. I want to watch somebody else play some.
Go. Life goes on.
Not letting you out of my sight, dude.
Yeah, those guys are real tough to fight.
Wow. Steady as stone.
Oh no.
Time to clean up.
Who is Royal Lady Rain?
Hmm?
Said who is Royal Lady Rain? I'm just Lady Rain. I'm not royalty. You like
Leave it
royal?
all to me.
Eh. Nah, I'll stay a lowly peasant. Alright.
Go. I didn't feel that. Yeah. Oh, no escape! Go, Baron Bunny! Hey! Be gone!
Take off! No, you don't. No, you don't.
Life goes on. Orders given. Orders received.
All these Genshin characters look royal. They do. They really do.
Go.
Beautiful.
I just wonder how many harbingers are gonna be coming across.
Oh, challenge complete. I survived. I vote to be royalty knight. Yeah, guide. Here. Yay, now what? Oh god. Not that way. Apparently this way. Is that right? Looks right. Door resurrection activated. That's oh god, there's so much more to this. I thought we were done.
No.
Get it if you want it. This
You
is
have
what
to
he
go
meant
through
by-
a lot.
That's what you meant about 2 more levels. Dang, I thought I picked an easy thing to do. I was trying to pick all the easy stuff and just get a bunch of stuff off the list. You secured a drop. Claim in your inventory now. I'm kind of busy right now.
Speaking of,
Claim.
have I hit that one yet? I did. Dang it. It didn't tell me.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There. So we just gotta figure out how to get around these little beamy things. And get into different places. Is that it?
Alright, Mona, you have to stream for at least another hour and a half.
Do I? To get drops?
So I can get my second to last drop, so I can just work slowly towards the 12-hour one.
What time does that put me at? After 10 o'clock?
Maybe.
Oh. Gonna be in trouble. Up time. 2 hours and 6 minutes. Yes, trouble. Yeah, my bedtime is 10 o'clock.
If I started on your stream, I have to end it on
I know. I started on Sixer's stream. You see, he's over there. No, I'm frozen! Get out of the water! No, don't freeze to death. Even though she's ice, I don't get it. I don't get it. She's ice, but yet she can be frozen. I don't. That just doesn't seem like she should be. You know, doesn't affect her, just like you get with the others. Doesn't affect them. Not effective. Why is it not effective on me? Don't follow me. I'm good for trouble, so don't follow me. Oh boy.
I am going to die real fast. Yup.
Oh, this looks like ice, boys. So, making me wish I had somebody different than Amber, but here it goes.
Seriously?
Oh, why did I hit that? Because my fingers are on the wrong buttons. Okay, so... Dang! Okay.
I must leave no stone unturned.
You guys are having fun with your little ice water combo here. I don't like it.
I usually take out the ice guys before I take out the water guys.
Yep.
Then...
Because he can stop locking you up.
Go.
Excuse you, Mr. Machine. Can you stop hitting me?
Windblade.
Fudge nuggets. Get hit by this machine again. I swear to God.
Ow! Trapped in a water bottle and frozen? Come on, you guys gotta quit! Oh. Oh, gosh. Alright.
Prepare to be blown away.
Blow your butt away. That didn't work either. Kinda did. Traveler, you are having a hard time. Let's just say that.
I'm having a hard time too. Oh no! Oh, that's gonna hurt. No, don't drop bombs on me.
Ah, Sixer! Thank you for the sub for 6 months in a row. Welcome, 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 welcome.
Alright, well, I'm dead.
Yeah,
Great.
Sixer's played it too. Alright, finally. Where is this ice culprit? Did we already kill the ice culprit? No.
I'll race you there.
Can't hit me. I'm behind a thing. Okay, just wait for it to stop shooting.
As a dutiful maid woman.
Alright, we're
I'll
gonna...
catch up.
I can't even get... Oh, this is gonna...
That hurt.
Come on out. Oh, okay. Help me, Sixer. I'm dying. Oh. God, these things are so evil. It's gonna beat the crap out of them, Noelle. Don't take it. Don't take it. Don't take their crap.
Ah!
Alright, Noelle is gonna jump out, and Chi-Chi's gonna go back in and play this game. Not let up until one is dead, because I'm tired of being tag teamed. There. Okay. You think you're funny, now I'm gonna freeze your watery butt. Oh no, wait, you're the snow one. You're the ice one. Never mind. Oh.
Leave it all to me.
Let's try this again. I think I only have to fight big
Get you
guys.
trapped in a corner and take you out. Royal Sixer? Yes, he's giving everybody royal names. Use Fire Mono. Yeah, I need a new fire character because Amber's like so tough to do. Okay, so I'm here. Do I push the thing now? Oh god, I gotta start something? Battle's just starting. Chi-Chi! Help!
Let's see.
I should try Genshin. You really should. It's a really good game. I think you'll like it, Turtle. I think you'll be addicted.
I was
Just
really confused for a moment.
1,
A tiny bit.
3, 4, 2,
Can I ascend Barbara?
2.
No.
Oh, it's Cube of Death. Lovely. What works on cubes? I forget. Fire?
Anything, you just have to, like...
No, this kind of cube in
the little
particular?
thing.
Life goes on.
Ice or water. I think mostly ice. Or fireworks too.
Fire and ice, okay. And then you have to watch out for the things on the floor that'll cut you up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not so hard. Go, Barrett Bunny.
My timing is so off on this. Dang.
Guys. Opening box.
Oh, I did that wrong. Wrong time. Oh god. Get in there.
Hey, get him.
Ah.
Oh.
Oh, jeez.
Wow. Wheel of life.
You have Noelle's shield. Have her use it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I must leave no stone unturned. Steady as stone.
No! When am I supposed to hit this thing?
Life goes on.
Now I remember why I like having Barbara around.
No, you don't, little cubey thing. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Ooh, that hurt.
Destroy bile prisms. Where? Ah! Bile prisms? How do I destroy those? With what? Fire? Ice?
Any elemental damage for those.
Okay. It brought back half its health.
Yup.
What the heck?
Go.
can't run fast enough to get past it. There we go.
No escape. Go, go, Baron Buddy.
No, it's gonna revive. Did it too slow. I don't think you can really get past that thing. Can I hit it? Why? Is it like a fake one, or some of them fake and some of them real? You dear. I know, right? Oh, jeez.
Leave it all to me. Wheel of life. Hey, go, go, Baron!
I'm just like behind with everything I do. Do everything at the wrong time. Oh.
I must leave no stone unturned. Faster? Okay, faster. Get him! Bet you can't keep up with me! Go.
Ah, 12 seconds left, 10, 9, and these stupid things pop back up. I was so freaking close, and I gotta start all the way over. I'm gonna be so salty. I was so freaking close. Recommended average level 35, which I totally have. Weapon level, artifact strength, combat talent level up and melt. Oh god. This is when I wish I had a better fire girl. Ugh. Stretch break? Right. Because you can't change your characters right now.
Hey, do you know what? Neither do I forgot.
Ah! Stretch break it is. Shake it out. Stretch my feet out. Touch my toes. Touch my nose. Ooh. Okay then. way out here?
1, 2, breathe. 3, 4, and
Do we want to keep trying, Turtle? She's got the idea.
Okay, front cuddles.
Gosh. Chi-Chi stretching. Gotta go, best luck, thank you. Yeah, Chi-Chi. Got this.
let's go somewhere cooler.
Like 500 apples. How long does it take to do this challenge? It took me long enough to get to this point that I kind of like want to defeat this thing, so. You know?
I feel that.
I just gotta stop panicking.
Yes.
That's where I mess up, is I panic. Like right now, I should pull out Amber. I should use a decoy. It's gonna start charging me. Oh, it found me anyway, instead of the decoy. And then I should switch to Chi-Chi, because I'm gonna fix him to be able to fight it. Maybe. Maybe not yet. As soon as I can fight it, Chi-Chi heals the fastest. I could throw out everybody again, because fixing him has me up. Should use a Noelle. Give him shielding. Let's say, like, my thinking is like a second behind everything I should be doing. Like, I know what I should be doing, but it's too late.
What do I think about it?
Life goes on.
I just smash buttons.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that.
It's way easier to smash buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it up to... Yeah.
Should be worth. What characters am I playing? I Diluc, Kaya, Ningguang, and Traveler or Barbara, depending on my mood. Barbara's kind of dead right now, but it's usually Traveler who's in my fourth slot.
Oh,
And then my third slot, which is Ningguang.
I must live on. Rise. Yeah. Sacred name. Fortune preserver.
Oh, that was good luck.
Go.
That was good luck.
Go, baby! Not so hard!
Steady as stone.
Monty Butt, come here.
Wheel of life. Rise.
I looked them up.
Traveler is a pair, yeah. You
What
either
is
play
this? I don't remember this.
Limune or Lumine, who is the female, or Aether, who is the male traveler.
I don't remember this last time. Are you gonna defeat these things?
Oh, that's different.
Yeah, it was different. I didn't see that last time. Missed my chance, but it still came after me instead of my decoy, which I don't like.
Life goes on.
Oh yeah, I just kind of suck at using the decoy thing.
Wow.
Well, I hope that the decoy explodes on it, but it doesn't usually work that way.
Steady as stone. Rise. Life goes on. Faster? Okay, faster.
Seriously, leave me alone. That hurts.
I must leave no stone unturned.
How do I destroy these things? That part I don't understand. Oh, I can't destroy them fast enough.
Oh god, oh god,
Which
oh
are
god,
you?
oh god.
You need to do elemental damage, not physical.
Wheel of life.
Go!
Steady as stone.
Seriously? Where is it?
Jeez.
Go, Barret Bunny! Go.
Jean and Key. Please, so I got the wrong ones to fight this. No.
What emotional damage? Yeah, I think it's doing a lot of emotional damage to Mono, not necessarily to the
character? Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Windblade, prepare to be blown away! Wheel of life. Go.
No.
Let it rain. Life goes on.
Where did it go? I don't have any elementals to use.
Go,
Figures. I didn't have any elementals to use once I come to that point. It always...
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to come back and do this later, aren't I?
Probably. I mean, I had to go back and wait. Is that not it?
Yeah, I don't
Wasn't
have
it?
either one of those characters.
Seriously? That's right. That's what I was hunting. Seriously?
Sad.
man?
Yeah, I know.
Come on, really?
It's so close though, like 2 times, but then I was like using up all my elements to get to that point, and then when the cubes would pop up that you had to use elements on, I didn't have anything available.
Okay.
You just spam too much before the actual thing, yeah. I get too excited, too hyper. I just mad click.
Yeah.
I gotta do it when I'm calm. Whatever that is. I don't know. It's not today. Let's see.
Don't talk to her like that. She's being cute.
It's escaped. It escaped. What's your favorite character's kimono? Well, so far Chi-Chi's my favorite. Where is that? Welcome back.
Trying to give some things to glory.
Someone needs assistance.
It's not me. No. Why do I feel like all these are gonna be hard now? Probably because that one got me paranoid. Like, all the others were so easy. And then I did the one and it was hard, and now I don't know what's hard and what's easy.
Are you talking about the domains?
Yeah. Like, it's just me.
So,
Pain in the butt.
that domain that you were doing was to make it to the point where you can continue leveling your adventure level.
Yeah.
Because it caps at 25. And then you have to do that. Yeah.
So I have to do that before I can go beyond 25. Oh.
Yeah. Kind of like I have to go do that because I want to pass rank 35, but that's not going to happen. So you have to make sure that your characters are leveled up to that. And then...
There's something hiding here. There it is. See it now.
I'll catch up.
That's what I was looking for.
Right. Leave it all to me.
Oh no, the foreground is taking hits again. Shh. I guess I can't fight and swim at the same time.
No.
I've no stone
quickly
unturned.
learned that. I think it's really rude.
Yeah, I agree, it's rude. Where is this other little mark at? I see another mark here of interest.
Why? I think, or is it in the water? Oh, that's probably one of the ones that's in the water. Under the bridge.
I think it's under the bridge. Oh yeah, it is under the bridge. I see it now. Look at that. Diamond.
I just happen to remember having a
Diamond
couple
soap.
that were under bridges.
Yeah. Defeat the 2E agent. Okay, well that shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah.
Just gotta find him. Him? No, that's him.
Leave it all to me. Someone needs assistance. Time
It's the
to clean
butthead.
up.
Butthead that vanishes. You know what? Well, he's gonna attack me, so I'm just gonna start spinning.
Yeah, he's low enough level, you got him.
Mm-hmm.
Go. Guys.
You shouldn't get so close to somebody else fighting and then wonder what's going on. Okay, so that was good. Now there's something going on this way. Up the hill? Oh. Oh, wait. I gotta wait until my energy's back up. I might as well come back and kill these guys real quick.
Go. Guys.
Get off me! We're gonna go this way. Oh, it's like 8 o'clock. I'm gonna turn into a pumpkin. Let's see. Book in the woods. Hey, we got a book. That was easy. Okay. Alright. So, yeah. That was easy.
How do I get that?
Innocent rocks? They're not innocent. They're evil rocks. Just kidding.
Breathe. Breathe.
Oh, this was so much fun. We actually accomplished some things on the list. You guys should be proud of me. I did a couple. So, you know, I got some things done. Still got a ton to do. But yeah, I worked on some of the world quests. Probably should work on the story quest and the Archon quest, but you know. Especially the ones that are still in Act 1. Because that one's in Act 2. These two are still in Act 1, so I imagine I should do those. Isn't it like right here though? 60 meters.
1, 2.
This is how you don't get off the game. You're like, wait, but this is right here. This is where I end the stream. It's supposed to be ending the stream. And I'm still playing. Oh, I remember him.
So, you've got a taste for adventure too, huh? I must say, the patrons, though the topic on everyone's lips is more of an urban legend than actual news. Even minding my own business, I still end up hearing all about it.
What are you sending me, Meow?
It's not one of those scary urban
National
legends, is it?
Fruit Compote Day. The word compote is French for mixture.
So,
Nice.
Paimon needs to take a deep breath first.
Oh, I like it. Now I need some fruit.
It's not a particularly scary story, no. At least, not for most people.
Yeah. Well, Sixer ended his stream.
Rude.
Rude. Can't, like, rate him or anything if he's not streaming.
That.
Well, then I'm not getting any of my drops because he stopped. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get any of my drops because you're stopping. I'm like almost 50% there.
I'm on the Heroes Wit one.
Yeah, that's what I'm at.
1 hour, 30 minutes left.
Oh, so I have 42% of the 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Jeez.
It's the tale of
I'm literally 45 minutes in.
Hero.
And you're getting off.
I know, it's terrible. And it's best if I stream for like 3 hours straight for it to actually count for anything, I think. But I don't know.
But you have to be like on top of making sure you claim it, because if you don't claim it, then it doesn't start the next one.
Yeah.
You weren't even listening.
You finished getting the drops?
Anyway,
proud of you.
The Dark Knight Hero.
I haven't finished it.
It is said that he appears in the middle of the night to fight evil and uphold justice. But to be honest, I don't have much interest in such rumors.
Well, shoot.
Unless, of course, he can help take care of the more belligerent patrons after they've had a few too many.
I wish I could play tomorrow, but I gotta work tomorrow.
I would happily take that as proof of his existence.
15 more minutes. 17 seconds.
I'm told that there have been a handful of
You want the
sightings,
3 hour mark?
but in the depths of night, no one can get a good look
Yeah,
at
I'm
him.
so close to the 3 hour mark, aren't I?
Perhaps, nevertheless, the sightings confirm that the Dark Knight
That might be
Hero-
bad.
Anyway,
I can't remember if the 3 hour mark is something or not. I think it is.
Plaza. I need to
I
serve
think I'm
some
supposed to stream for 3 hours.
Dark Knight.
I have to go back and look at the rules.
Seems like your standard cookie
Streamer
cutter urban
rules.
legend.
I should be able to make it. I know I
But
have the
just
brush.
a
There
little
we go.
darker.
I got plenty.
Says... Where is it? View detail. No. No, that's not what I want. I don't see the tiers. Okay, stream duration. Complete 3 hours of streaming within 1 week. Oh, that's the 1 week one. To get anything for a single day, you have to stream 6 hours.
Ew.
Yeah. It's 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, or 30 hours. If you complete 30 hours straight, you get 800 jumps. But that's more than a 24-hour stream. That's 30 hours.
People are desperate for that stuff.
Consecutive check-in milestones. So 3 hours for 3 complete 3 hours of streaming per week for 3 consecutive weeks, I'll only get 150. That's more like my speed, though. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I might get 150 gems out of this.
Oof.
If you stream 30 hours straight, you get 800 promo gems.
Wonder who it could be. Once you're ready,
I don't think that's worth it.
Not for 30 hours. Yeah. Where is Charles?
He is at
In a different.
tavern.
He's in a different town.
No, Angel's Share. He's in Mondstadt.
Oh.
He's
Just
inside
doesn't show
Angel's
it.
Share.
Hey, do you know what? Neither do I. I already forgot.
Tier all. Is this for Genshin only? Yeah. Who needs roads? You can run through the grass and the poles. Hey, my dot's disappeared. Oh, because he's here somewhere. I hate that when you gotta find who you're looking for and you don't even know who you're looking for.
Oh yeah, no, just ask the people by the fountain.
Ask the bystanders.
You want to find out about the Dark Knight hero? Look no further. It's me. You're right, I'm not. I was joking.
Has been caught. I caught the Pokemon.
Jokes aside, I do think that the Dark Knight hero and I have one thing in common.
What's that?
It's the way he sticks to his principles. Coming out here
Thank
night after night,
you.
fighting for...
Wow, so you're a nocturnal vigilante too?
No, I just mean he must be seriously rich.
That was a tier A.
Why is that?
That's good then, right? 1500 battles, ranks, shinies. You got 2 shinies?
People only start worrying about spiritual fulfillment once they have enough
What's wrong,
material
Turtle? What? Yeah, tier A is the best. Nice, I got a tier A one.
It's the same in every hero story, isn't it? No, it's nothing.
We're talking about Pokemon and
Too much time
Genshin
on my hands
6.
these days.
If you're thrown off tier A, it's Pokemon.
Same difference. You are the boss of the Cat's Tail after all.
Why don't you ask the guards at the city gate? They do night shifts all the time. They must know something.
They know something.
You want to know about him?
Oh yeah, I remember now watching your last Genshin VOD.
In fact, I'm one of the few who has seen him with my own 2 eyes.
If Pokeshop doesn't work.
Great! This is the guy we need to talk to.
Try Pokemart. Okay.
So,
stop.
who is
Is that
the
really a
Dark Knight
thing?
hero?
Yeah, what hype? Oh yeah, because we were guessing all the names.
Whoa, slow down.
Oh my god.
Let me start from the beginning. Well, I was patrolling one night when
Oh, it's
suddenly
Pokeshop,
I
but you
heard
have to put
something.
the item in the quantity
I rushed
that you
over
want.
to check it out.
Yeah, I bought all 10 great balls
I
earlier.
saw a gang of suspicious-looking fellows who looked like they were up to no good, so I quickly hid.
Hid? You're supposed to be a guard.
That was when he appeared. He was dressed in black from head to toe, perfectly hidden in the night. The way he crept up on those bad guys must have felt like a living nightmare.
Wow.
Guess what I did next? I wasn't the bad guy. Why would I need to run away? Still, I did leave the scene. I didn't want to be a nuisance to the Dark Knight hero. So instead, I headed to the Knights of Favonius' residence. Correct. I thought surely someone with such a strong sense of justice and who voluntarily protects Mondstadt is exactly the kind of person you'd find in the Knights of Favonius. But it seems I was wrong.
Wrong. KimonoKat, also when the poke commands aren't working, you could ask the PCG support Discord channel for a mod to reset PCG for your channel. Oh, okay.
I checked everywhere, and there were no signs of anyone having left the building.
Most of the time they seem like they're working. Most of the time.
Can't be from the Knights of Favonius after all?
Gotta go cook fries. Have a super night. Bye, meow. Enjoy your fries. Stay peace up.
But I just can't understand. Why would... I'm sure they would warmly welcome someone of his
I guess
abilities.
I'll try to stay royal. I don't know how well I can do that, meow.
What you're trying to make is
Yeah.
you don't know who the Dark Knight hero is either?
Will do.
Hey, don't be like that. At least by talking to me, you've ruled out a few more people. Anyway, try asking at the flower shop. I heard a girl there's been talking about the time you rescued her.
Flower shop.
Wind go with you.
The way she looks up to him, she's like, "You're so freaking tall."
She's so tiny.
Yeah. The flower shop, right?
Pie. That's what I'll make tonight. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get him out of my mind?
Hello? We'd like to ask you about the Dark Knight hero.
Stay well. GG.
My hero! Oh, sorry. Just hearing his name gets me lost in thought. Is it that obvious? Oh no. What am I going to do if Master D-Luke ever finds out?
Huh? What's D-Luke got to do with this?
Well, I guess I might as well spill the beans then. I used to think D-Luke was the one for me. But ever since the time I was rescued by the Dark Knight hero, I just don't know anymore.
Wowee! You saw the Dark Knight hero? For real? What's he like?
It all happened so fast. I was so scared. All I remember is seeing a flash of fire, but I felt safe. Who knows? Now that you mention it, a pyrovision does seem like a good explanation. It lit up the whole area in an instant. I remember that very well.
Okay then. Thanks for the intel, Donna. See you around. So, based on what we know so far, all we need to do is find a wealthy, vision-wielding vigilante who's not one of the knights.
A wealthy vision wielding vigilante who's not. Oh.
Nope, still no idea. But we already asked so many people. Guess we gotta see for ourselves. Let's take a look around the city at nighttime. If we're lucky, we just might bump
Have you
into
figured
him.
out who it is yet?
Pretty sure it is Duluth, right?
Dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Maybe if we're lucky.
That's what I thought. I was like, she has nothing to worry about. It is Duluth. Same man. I wonder if she likes him so much.
Faster? Okay, faster.
Whoa. Scared me. It scared me the way it froze and jumped me into the scene. That's why you like Diluc so much.
Hero is Master Diluc?
No, I think it's after this. You'll see.
After managing to
It's
steer
not
clear
that
of the
scene at
guard's
all.
patrol route, I never
But I do like
anticipated
the
I'd
fire.
run into you instead. Dark Knight Hero? Sounds awfully derivative to me. Please tell me you didn't come up with that.
How is this the first you've heard of the name? Every man and his dog in Mondstadt is yapping about the Dark Knight Hero.
I do not concern myself with idle chatter. Though, I suppose I may take the idleness of others as a sign that peace prevails.
Huzzah! The great mystery of the Dark Knight Hero of Mondstadt. We solved it! Now then, Mr. Dark Knight Hero.
Please stop calling me that. Seriously, it makes me uncomfortable.
Not surprised. It's the stupidest superhero name Paimon's ever heard. You should come up with something more original. Like... Captain
Pie?
Captain Pyro!
Pyro. Oh no.
Tell us, Captain Pyro, what happened here today?
Jesus. He's like, what the heck? Oh.
Yeah.
It was the Abyss Order.
Them again?
At times I feel bad for the other characters because they have to put up with Paimon's shenanigans
some
just as much
initial
as you do.
reconnaissance.
Mm-hmm.
Considering that I've proven myself to be one step ahead of them on countless occasions, their persistence is unusual. I assume so, unless you're aware of any other Dark Knight heroes around these parts. The Knights are, for the most part, an utterly incompetent bunch. I cannot trust them to take this matter over. That's not my point. I'm not doing this to impress anyone. Well, I hope this conversation has been of service to you. Because I would like to ask for a favor in return.
Oh boy.
What is it, Master Diluc? Your wish is our command.
You must keep my identity a secret. Above all, it is crucial that you do not let the Knights of Favonius know I am connected to any of this.
It's in blue. Do not let the Knights of Favonius know that I could. Why is it in blue?
Because it's a very important thing that they do not know that it is Diluc. So do not let it spill.
I just realized like my photo is covering up.
Yeah, it's fine.
Covering up the thingamajig, and you guys can't even see all the text.
Subtitle?
Nobody's said anything all night.
I don't care.
Nobody's cared that my fat head is covering up the text all night.
It's not that. Oh my god, no.
There.
You were fine where you were at. It's fine.
No, I'm not covering up the text. There we go.
Oh my god.
It bothers me.
What's that sound? Yikes! Have the Abyss Order sent backup already?
They appear to just be small-timers. You should have no trouble dealing with them. I cannot afford delays on account of a few lackeys. I shall have to let you take care of them. Remember, don't tell a soul.
Not even your girlfriend.
Hey! You're just gonna leave us like this?
Of course.
Life goes on. Opening box of Adepti tricks.
We get to fight in the city. This is cool. Oh, there's more of them.
Go.
Over here.
Cobalt.
Greetings. I thought I heard something, so I came to check it out. Did you see anything out of the ordinary?
Nope. Nuh-uh. Not here. Nothing. Zilch. Unless you're looking for the Dark Knight hero, in which case...
What?
The Dark Knight hero? You saw him?
Oh, the Dark Knight hero is, her!
You! The hero who safeguards Mondstadt from the shadows. On behalf of the Knights of Favonius, thank you for your service to the city.
No! Why am I the Dark Knight hero now? No.
Because Paimon doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut.
Wait a second. Aren't you the traveler that just arrived in the city? Rumors were circulating about the Dark Knight hero long before you ever arrived here.
Oh,
Why would you lie to me about that? Never mind. You don't seem like bad folks.
The other side.
But I do hope you will visit the Knights of Favonius soon, where we can discuss the Dark Knight hero situation in more detail. You know, some things are best not discussed in public. Duty calls. I must be going.
seems like Huffman has something he really wants to say to you about the Dark Knight hero. Better head over to the Knights of Favonius and see if you can find him.
Did I make it to 3 hours yet?
Huffman!
Oh,
yeah,
it's you two.
Like 5 minutes ago.
Thank you for... So, the Dark Knight hero. Do you have anything else you're able to
I'm
share with me?
only 65%
yes,
of the way
course
through.
I should fill you in first. The situation is...
Jeez, what horrible handwriting.
What the heck? Just see hereby blank you shall march for on Mondstadt front gate at if you wish to cling to your so-called justice, don't sit idle by, set up and accept. Otherwise Mondstadt shall take the fall if you and you instead. And your steed. Weird.
Let me take a closer look. Huh?
Indeed. Although this is written in the common tongue, it appears that a cipher has been used in many places. Nevertheless, one can grasp the general message from the non-ciphered portions alone. This is a war declaration from the Abyss Order to the Dark Knight hero.
Does that mean the bad guys want the Dark Knight hero to go away forever and ever?
Something like that. Thus, we are hoping to contact him as soon as possible so that we can attempt to coordinate a response. After all, this matter no longer concerns merely the Dark Knight hero himself. It impacts the entire city of Mondstadt if you find out anything at all.
2 hours.
Come and find me.
It's like, I'll never make it. Yeah, I will.
Sent by the Abyss Order. This is not good news at all for Master Diluc. Quick, we should go tell him right away.
Why did I hit that?
I don't know. Why'd you do that? I do that sometimes though too.
Go to Dawn Winery?
Should be over by Springvale.
person to talk to. Nice air, Kimono. Thank you. Can I stop right here?
Yeah, yeah, you should be okay.
Why do I feel like there's a wedding taking place in here?
There's not, I promise. He's just rich.
He's very rich.
Yeah, well, you know, when the family runs a wine distillery or winery or whatever, and he takes over.
See that. Lewis, welcome, welcome. Long time no see. How you doing? Hope you're doing great. You caught me right as I'm ending. My goal was 3 hours. 3 hours tonight. Okay, let's see what my uptime is. Although I was actually supposed to be in bed at 10 o'clock too, so. I'm failing at that part.
Yeah, I'm a bad influence.
I'm disappointed. Let's see. Alright. Going to TwitchCon Vegas? I don't know yet. I don't know. Maybe I went to the last one. But I don't know. We'll see. I haven't really decided. How about you? Oh, were you at the last one? I think you were, weren't you? Yeah, you were. I don't know why I forgot that already. You got your hotel booked in your shark costume? Nice. It is way past my bedtime. I am tired. I'm working like 60 hours a week, so I'm exhausted. And I still gonna try to stream for you guys, so if I seem a little forgetful, yeah. Cool haircut, Mono. Yeah, here we go. It's just like, super short now. I have short hair, yeah, that's it. Best stream ever. Go to bed now. Yes. Here we go. I'm trying to make it look short and pink, but it's not working. There we go. I'm not very good at this. And you're like, what the heck is these long pieces? I don't know where this came from. That was a very bad haircut job. Get some sleep, Kimono. Sleep is important. It is. Especially when I start acting like this. Oh gosh. I'd cosplay him like a prince. Oh yeah, DeLuca's awesome. Also, I'm forcing Mono to bed after stream because I hoped. Off Discord? Yeah, Mono, and stream and sleep, please. Okay, alright, guys. Love your faces. Hair grows. Yes. Now I grew super long. Then I have a pink mustache. On a pink goatee. What do you think? Good night, Luz. Good night, Meow. Good night, Lady Rain, Turtle, everybody lurking. Thank you so much for lurking. Don't forget to hit that follow button. If you want to catch me when I go live, you can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. I will be live again Friday. We're gonna play some bingo on stream Friday though. And if I can, I'll be back maybe Saturday. I can't make no promises with some more Genshin, but I can't make any promises. So, yeah, here's my thingamajigs. Yeah. But I'll see you guys. Love your faces. Good night, everyone. Oh, I gotta do the end credits because they're gonna be like a mile long. You know that, right? Because of all those like subs I got today. Hold on, we gotta roll the end credits. Let me see if I can find this crazy tool. Just because people were so, oh, Mono, please. I'm working on bedtime is super important. I know. I am working on it too. I'm trying to be 10 o'clock. I already feel bad. I'm already 30 minutes late. Alright. That's it. Good night, everyone.